Okay, what's up? In recognition of the 50th person or so that I've banned or blocked, I should say, for saying, you smoke in the beginning of your video to look cool, faggot. First of all, the only people who would smoke on purpose to look cool are 15-year-old kids because they don't know any better. I'm an adult, and when I'm speaking, I personally have a tendency to do a lot of things with my hands, move them in retarded ways, and if I'm holding something like a cigarette, let's say, it keeps me from, doing that. It's like in public speaking, you might be taught to hold the paper, put your hands on the podium. Uh, it's just a strategy. But in commemoration of the 50th block, I'm going to do something that is unnecessary and something that I wouldn't normally do otherwise, which is smoke a pipe. I got the fucker lit eventually. I would not normally do this, but I'm going to do it now. Alright, anyway, I'd like to clarify something, a point I made in the last video, and something that I just was concerned that people misinterpreted. Because, I made the statement that I feel that war is often necessary. And I was surprised how many people disagree with me. I don't know why, but sometimes I just am. And I was like, well, I wonder why. And so I went to someone that I often go to when I don't understand what other people are thinking, and that's my mother. And I said, hey, Mom, what's up with this? And she watched the video and she read the comments. She's like, well, you have to understand that they're not in your head, so maybe they thought that you meant that you think war needs to be going on constantly. And I thought, well, that is a good point. I could see how people could get that out of what I said. And so I just like to say that that's not what I meant to imply. I don't think we need war constantly. I just think that oftentimes war is necessary and is justified. Justification is a tricky word because that all depends on what side of the spectrum you're on. But, take the revolution, for example. Parliament and the king were never going to give the colonies what they wanted. Ever. No matter how much we negotiated. It wasn't going to happen. There had to be a war. That was how it was fucking going down. Take the Civil War. Slavery and, the complaints of the southern states were not going to be solved, at least within the foreseeable future, without a war. It was necessary. You oftentimes need war to upset a power structure. You need war to change, the way governments are run around the world. You needed things like World War I and World War II to break the imperialism that was going on of European countries owning large parts of the world. That was a necessity, at least to have those things happen at the time. In order to end fascism, you had to go in and defeat Hitler, or whatever the case may be. So, that was all I was trying to get out of that. And I don't necessarily have a problem with war. I have a problem with specific wars. And it might, and I nitpick about certain things that we do in war. My main problem when it comes to things like civilian killings and stuff like that isn't necessarily that the civilians are being killed, because I recognize that it's a war and that shit goes down. But it's when people are when people are being hypocrites about it, acting like, they didn't mean it to happen or whatever, or, it's okay that they killed civilians because the other guys killed civilians or whatever. That's when it pisses me off. It's like when I was talking about World War II in a video, you know, I don't necessarily have a problem with the bombings of Dresden or the fire bombings of Japanese cities. I have a problem when the Allied nations try to act like they're morally superior, even though they did the same kind of shit that the Japanese and the Germans did. That's where my problem is. So I hope, you know, I've cleared that up. You know, and war does advance us socially and technologically. We might have gotten to the same point that we are now in terms of technology without war, but it certainly would have taken a long time. War spurs invention like nothing else, and that's just the way that it is. And oftentimes those inventions are started out for the use in war and transfer into other things. You know, somebody sent me an email about, I don't know, nuclear weapons or something. I delete my emails after I read them, which is a mistake. But, you know, do you think people should have nuclear weapons or whatever? Yeah, I'm not against nuclear warfare even, really. You know, I don't want to be killed by it, but I'm not necessarily against it. You know, what's the moral difference between nuking a city and bombing it with a million bombs? I mean, what's the moral difference between one bomb and a million? I don't understand. You know, everyone's freaked out about North Korea having a nuke. A nuke of the size that North Korea would have, you know, is not any more dangerous than a couple days of shelling with massed artillery or a couple days of bombing from the air. It's really not that big of a difference. I mean, their bombs are slightly less powerful than the ones that we use in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those only really had the impact that they did because they were so frightening. You know, you can kill just as many people with bullets and bombs as you can with a nuke. Sure, it has more environmental hazards, that's true, but usually that's not what freaks people out. To me, the method of killing is not as important, you know, as the fact that they've actually been killed. That's what the issue should be. It's like, I was watching The Patriot on YouTube, which I was very happy to find, and somebody had a comment about, like, you know, the worst thing that you can do is burn people alive inside of a church. And I was like, why is that any different? And they're like, well, because the church is a sanctuary or whatever. I'm like, so are you really ascribing a moral difference between burning civilians alive in a church or burning civilians alive in a barn or something? I don't see the difference there. And that's the kind of shit that I'm talking about when it comes to things like nuclear weapons. I will say that I am against biological warfare, not necessarily chemicals, because, you know, things like nerve gas and stuff dissipate eventually, and they can be relatively controlled over a certain area. But I'm against things like the weaponization of smallpox, and, you know, shit like that. Attempted weaponization of Ebola. You know, I'm not for that, because that can't be controlled at all. You know, if you nuke an area, you can guess within a reasonable doubt as to what areas are going to be affected by the fallout. But when you unleash a biological, you know, weapon, you can't be sure what's going to happen. I don't know. So this rambling, contradiction-filled video is over, because I'm about to run out of time in 30 seconds. So, yeah, quit bugging me about the cigarette thing, because it's really starting to piss me off.